Hey everybody, this is Sentinel, and I'll be your host for today's video. In this video, I'm going to be talking about my experiences in the Rivals of Aether community, and saying thank you to the people who have inspired me and supported me along my way to getting where I am now. Later on, I'll say a few words to aspiring players in the community, and a few words to the community in general. To make it easier on myself, and so you don't have to stare at my face the whole time, I'll have different images on screen that relate to the story. If I'm just talking generally, like I am now, I'll have my friend New York Crag here on screen. It's basically who I am anyway. Before we start, who is SNT Sentinel anyway? For those of you who aren't as familiar with me, let me tell you a bit about myself. Here you can see what I do in the community, in order from the most recent things at the top to the oldest things at the bottom. To give you a quick overview, basically, I'm a Rivals of Aether coach and crew leader, a tournament organizer in New York City, a sponsor to both my own crew and to the top player MSB, a commentator, and a competitor. If you want to take the time to read all the details, you can go ahead and pause the video here, and then we'll get moving on. So who was I before Rivals of Aether came along? When I was around 9 years old, my cousin bought me a GameCube with Super Smash Bros. Melee, and I was really excited because it was my first real video game console. I remember popping in Melee and playing Adventure Mode, and because I only had one controller, I never thought about the fact that two people could fight against each other in the game. I just thought it was a fun variety game. When Brawl came out, Subspace Emissary made me continue to think that Smash Bros. Was just an adventure game. It wasn't until 2010 that I found out about the Smash community, 1v1 matches, and started playing Smash Bros. With friends to see who was the best in the group. The week I started college, I hosted a Brawl tournament and worked with some other guys to set up a Smash Bros. Facebook page for our school. I realized that, compared to everyone around me, I wasn't very good at Smash, but I enjoyed being around my friends anyway. Occasionally, we'd have tournaments, and I'd be one of the main tournament organizers. During my second year at college, an older friend with a car would sometimes drive us out to Xanadu Games to enter Smash Bros. Tournaments. He was pretty good at Melee, making it pretty far into brackets, while I wouldn't usually even win one set. I didn't mind, because I liked being able to support my friend and see the Smash community. Fast forward 2 years, and I had been playing Smash at college for about 3 years, casually of course, and I was the co-president of the school's official Smash Bros. Club. I would still host weekly Smash Fests at my apartment, and we'd have small tournaments from time to time. While everyone around me seemed to be improving, I felt like I had hit a wall. Smash just wasn't as fun as it used to be. No matter what I did, it always felt like I was fighting the mechanics of the game. Around November 2015, I stumbled upon Rivals of Aether. I can't even remember how I found out about it, but I downloaded Rivals and told my friends about it. At our school's next Smash Bros. Event, I took my laptop with Rivals to an empty table near the Melee setups and challenged some friends to play Rivals. I beat my friends and felt that maybe I had finally found the game for me. Of course, being able to beat friends in a new game didn't mean much, but I was curious and wanted to explore it more. The smoothness of the gameplay drew me in. The feeling of freedom people described having in Melee, I felt in Rivals. So I started training and started entering online tournaments. The first Rivals tournament I ever played in was on December 12th, 2015. That tournament was Get Good 12, the infamous tournament where MSB came in first place over Forrest, who then went by Mr. LZ. When I saw MSB's streams later on, I was impressed with his play and decided to try playing Crag myself. Another big influence was Bumblebomb, who I would see streaming Rivals of Aether very consistently, and was another influence on me picking up Crag as a main. Through later streams and tournaments, I also got to see AZ Cards, a top-level Crag who relied on fundamentals, good game sense, and understanding of his character to get to the top. As someone with little tech skill myself, who wanted to make a name for himself, AZ was definitely someone to admire as well. I won my first match in an online tournament about 6 weeks after I started playing in tournaments, on January 30th, 2016. I went 1-2 for 33rd place. In March of 2016, I actually got to meet MSB for the first time at a Rivals Fest at Nebulous Games, the old Smash venue in New York City. We chatted and played a bit, but I had to go back to Baltimore for college, so I didn't know when the next time I would be able to see him would be. Overall, I had a few decent runs, including what you see on your screen here. What you don't see here though, is all the tournaments I entered where I only won one match, or didn't win any at all. Trust me, there were a lot of them. I was starting to understand the game, but I still lacked a good neutral game and had no sense of combos really. Regardless, I enjoyed playing Crag and was confident that I would continue to improve. During the spring of 2016, I was playing Rivals almost every day, either random matches online or in online tournaments. All of that playing Rivals did a number on my hands. At the time, I was playing Rivals in a GameCube controller. Part of the problem was that I was just playing too much. The other part was I was holding the controller really tightly while playing. Around April of 2016, I developed pain in my right thumb and index finger that was so bad I could barely move them. I knew I had to take time away from Rivals to let my hand heal, and that I would need to find a new controller to play on to avoid injuring myself again in the future. I took the next few months to focus on finishing my undergraduate studies and graduating from college, as well as teaching English online every morning. I graduated, moved back home, and would start the Rivals grind again soon enough. In the fall of 2016, I picked up Rivals again, and I was able to have several decent runs in the community-run Rivals events, getting pretty reasonable placings. Of course, there were plenty of tournaments where I didn't do so well, and the inconsistency was my personal curse. Despite that, the satisfaction of occasional success overpowered the frequent losses. I started making a bit of a name for myself, more so as a commentator, and got invited to do commentary for the weekly regional tournaments that were being run, which was my first opportunity to really connect with Bumblebomb, one of my inspirations to take Rivals so seriously in the first place. I was happy to get my voice out in the community, and though my tournament results were still inconsistent with low lows and not very high highs, I felt that overall I was improving at a decent rate and that the time I was putting into Rivals was worth it. Here you can see some of my best tournament results from the fall 2016 online community season. My best record was always going 3-2, and my placing really just depended on how many people entered the tournament. And just like the spring, there were plenty of tournaments where the records weren't so great. Also during fall 2016, the developers of Rivals of Aether started an official tournament series, the Rivals Championship Series, or RCS, with even bigger events than the original online community tournaments. I was motivated to continue improving and compete with people from around the country. Early fall 2016 was a huge confidence booster, as I entered 4 RCS events. My lowest placing was 25th, and my highest placing was 13th, which I was pretty happy with. Now, I put an asterisk next to the 13th placing, because I did get a free win due to a high-level player not being able to show up on time to our match. But, as the saying goes, we take those. As you can also see here, I didn't have tournament results during November of 2016, and that's actually because I was traveling. When I got back home, I was a bit rusty, and I had actually made the decision to start playing on the D-pad of an Xbox One controller, partially to try to save my hands, and partially out of personal preference. For those who aren't aware, the D-pad is the 4-directional button on the lower left side of the controller. So why would anyone choose that form of directional input when it is clearly inferior to the analog stick, which allows 360 degrees of movement? I always felt that the analog inputs were inconsistent for me, and that I needed digital inputs to move how I really wanted to. It was also just another thing that made me feel unique. Around December of 2016, Fullstream started a server and crew called ACE, for people who were serious about improving and having training partners to practice with. It was open to just about anyone at first, I think, with about 25 members when I joined the server. When Fullstream announced that he would be limiting the number of members, some dropped out, while the rest of us who stayed would have to fight for a right to a spot on the crew. It was around this time that I met Bagel online, who would later go on to become one of, if not the best Daedalus main in Rivals, and Tandoori, who has been on the top 50 player list multiple times and is a notable Maple player in his own right. I managed to secure a position among some top players of the time, like Pro Double Sushi and Fullstream himself, but I always felt that I was trailing behind. I felt that I had been given a chance to prove myself, and felt out of place among players so much more established than myself. Still, I appreciated having their guidance and having the opportunity to train with them. There was one more tournament in the season to go to, and it would be my first major event ever, Genesis 4 in California. Before going to Genesis 4, I made plans about where and who to stay with, and ended up being able to share an Airbnb with MSB and Bumblebomb. I was glad to finally be able to meet them both in person. I was also going to get the chance to meet some other people I'd gotten to know online, like Tandoori. Speaking of Tandoori, I was able to give him some advice before Genesis, in the form of coaching. By the end of 2016, I had a few Rivals players who I mentored, and my commentating lent itself to coaching as I was becoming more analytical and aware of the intricacies of the game. The week before Genesis 4, Tandoori sent me some replays to review, and I gave him a small write-up with my thoughts on how to be in tip-top shape for the tournament. The morning of Genesis 4, I got to meet Tandoori and talk about our expectations for the tournament. After chatting a bit, we split off to play our matches. Later in the day, I heard that Tandoori had placed 13th, and I felt proud because I had helped a friend make it so far in the tournament. Of course, I can't take too much credit, but I'd like to believe that I played at least a minor role in helping Tandoori prepare. As for myself, I finished Genesis 4 in 25th place, playing only on D-pad. I got to meet another crag I looked up to at Genesis as well, AZ Cards, and I actually had to play him in bracket. Of course, I lost, but I didn't feel discouraged. I was glad to have been able to talk to him, and playing with him gave me hope that I could become a better Crag in the future, if I just kept playing. My goal for the weekend was really just to make it out of pools, into the top 32 players. Throughout RCS Season 1, I felt like I was always on the cusp of breaking into the league of mid-high level players. And seeing several of my crewmates on the top 50 list made me proud. I wished I myself had improved faster and had better results. But after some reflection, after Genesis 4, I decided that I should really focus on my work life, and decided to retire from competitive rivals, at least temporarily. Me leaving the Ace crew made room for Turtlebox, also known as T-Box, to join the crew, and he would go on to become a top Crag player. T-Box mentioned years later that seeing me and the other Ace players at Genesis 4 had inspired him to pursue a breakout in the community of his own. And I still think it's incredible that I could have had that kind of effect on someone who I myself came to look up to. I guess T-Box was a kind of spiritual successor. Ace needed a Crag who was going to push his way to the top, and he was the perfect person for the job. I never regret my decision to leave the crew. I enjoyed my time being a part of something bigger, and it felt great to be able to connect with top players in a game that I had come to love so much. After Genesis, I took some time to think about what I really wanted to do in the community. I didn't want to just leave Rivals behind, but I felt like there was something more that I wanted, or that I needed to do, in addition to, or maybe instead of, competing. As far as I knew, I was done with Rivals as of February 2017. Little did I know, my career was really only getting started, and the fall of 2017 would have me back like I would have never expected. I want to take some time here to say thank you to some of the people who inspired me to get involved in Rivals of Aether, whether it was by watching their streams, talking online, playing, however much, or however little interaction we had. They each had their own impact on me. First, I want to say thank you to the Crag players who inspired me to pick up the character and stick with him over the years. Bumblebomb, whose streams I could always count on, and for being the first voice I really got to know in the community. He also helped me get started as a commentator in the Rivals community. AZ Cards, for being approachable and chatting at Genesis 4 and showing me the importance of fundamentals. I always had a blast rooting for him at the tournaments, and I always looked forward to seeing him play. MSB, for being an amazing player who strives to push his character to the limits, making me believe that Crag is viable at the top level time and again, and for being a good friend to this very day, and helping me in pretty much all my recent ventures in the Rivals community. Next, I want to say thank you to a few people who were in the Ace crew with me and who had a positive impact on me. Pro Double Sushi. I always had fun watching his streams, and he was a great sparring partner. Though we were only in touch for a short while, I think I have Sushi to thank for toughening me up as a newer player. Menace13, who at the time was also an Ace with me, in addition to being an old crewmate and an incredible player, being able to play the entire cast. Menace has made himself an invaluable member of the Rivals community as a TO and walking encyclopedia of Rivals competitive facts and data, and luckily I've gotten to meet up with him both at Xanadu and when he came up north for TAPS. Clough. One of the reasons that I wanted to join the Ace crew in the first place was that my friend Clough, who had been a Crag Ditto sparring partner for a good portion of 2016, had also gotten into the crew. He was someone who always pushed me to never settle. We spent hours over 2016 training and talking, and he played a huge role in me sticking to the Rivals and wanting to get to know people in the community. Another Ace crew member who I met when I joined, I want to thank Penguin, who even though we only played and talked a few times back in the day, made an impression on me in those earlier days. I still remember a specific time when we played online and were in a voice call. There wasn't too much talking happening because we were concentrating, and didn't know each other too well because we were just new crewmates. But I did manage to get a few chuckles out of him, and it made me feel more confident that I could connect with him and the others. Watching Penguin climb the ranks as one of the best players in all of Rivals has been inspirational, and I'm glad to still be in touch with him after all these years. Finally, of course, I want to say thank you to Fullstream himself for giving me the opportunity to be a part of his crew, giving me a chance to prove myself as a player, and to have access to the crew resources. Full was the first super high-level player to acknowledge me in the community, and that positive experience has always stayed with me. Even though I wasn't a top player myself, it felt good knowing people liked having me around. Finally, I want to say a quick thank you to various members of the community who, regardless of whether we talked regularly or only crossed paths once, had a hand in making me who I am today. Bagel, for all the friendlies we played, and for being a part of my growth during the Ace era. As a sparring partner, I got to learn about Bagel's drive and determination to become a top player, and seeing his rise has been amazing to me. Tandoori, for being someone to talk to, and having faith in me as a coach and someone who could give advice. Even though I had coached some others before, getting the recognition from Tandoori and seeing the results of what I could do are part of what motivated me to pursue coaching later on. Protagify, for putting my name out there when it came to commentary, and for being another person who saw potential in me becoming a mentor. Protagify is also to thank for me doing what I do now. I actually got to meet him for the first time when I went on a trip to Hawaii in 2018, and I saw him later on at Super Smash Con that same year. Hanging out was super fun, and I hope we can meet again soon at another event in the future. Sparks, for being a co-commentator during my early days, and for hyping me up as a commentator to others. Trust me, that compliment stuck with me. Plus, Sparks was a pretty high-level Crag player himself back in the day, and you already know how I feel about Crag players. Another cool commentator was Windows. I always felt that we had good synergy, and I'm glad that I got some of my earlier experience commentating with him. I also liked checking out his stream and playing friendlies, and always appreciated getting the chance to test my progress, knowing he wouldn't hold back. Finally, and this is a personal favorite of mine, a shout out to Hoppy Knits. In January of 2017, in the midst of a conversation about notable Crags, including the ones I looked up to, such as Bumble, AZ Cards, and MSB, Hoppy mentioned that I was kinda notable. I don't know what he was thinking, because I was definitely not a top player. But also, I had done commentary and coaching, so maybe I was at least a well-rounded Crag. Regardless, when you hear something like that, it basically makes your whole year. There were plenty of Crags that were better at me at the time, but my goal was never just to be a player. It was to be somebody. And coaching, commentating, and playing, all those things together let me make a name for myself. Last year, I got to meet Hoppy at a New York Rivals Locals, and gave him a bowl of spicy ramen. It's the least I could do. Alright, enough of the sappy stuff, but I genuinely want to say thank you to everyone who's watched and made it this far. If I missed anyone in my video, I'm sorry. You gotta understand that this all happened over 4 years ago, so it's impossible to remember everything. But definitely know that I appreciate you. So that about wraps it up for the story on how I got started with my Rivals career. But there's still plenty to talk about after 2017, so I hope you'll join me next time when I talk about the more recent years and how I've stayed involved in the community. Thank you again everyone for giving me a community I can be a part of, and giving me a place where I can be myself, and have a positive impact on others. For you new players out there, remember to have fun and keep striving to be the best you can be. And to everyone, never underestimate the good that can come from a comment in passing. You might make someone's day, week, or their whole year. So, after this video, I'm going to go on and continue creating Rivals of Aether content, so I hope you all look forward to seeing that. Make sure to subscribe so you stay updated with my videos, hit the like button, share the video with your friends, and thanks again for watching. It really means a lot to me. Until next time, I hope you have a good day, and take care.